Hello, Lukáš.
Hello, Mark.
So I am Mark Shapiro, artistic director and conductor of the chamber chorus Cantori, New York. And I'm here with Lukáš Janata, who is a fantastic composer, whose huge new cantata, Cantori, will be premiering on May 18th at 8 p.m. and May 19th at 3 p.m. at Church of the Holy Apostles on Ninth Avenue at 28th Street in New York City. So I'm delighted to be talking to Lukáš about the piece. Lukáš, this piece has been a long time in the creating and has had many different parts of your thought process. So first, we'll talk about the piece in a moment, but first let's talk a little bit about you. So tell us where you are right now.
Well, it's true that there's been so much thought process and so much.
No, but tell us physically where you are right now.
Oh, okay. I thought that we were already speaking metaphorically.
We'll get there soon. Yeah.
Okay. I'm in Taos, New Mexico, at the Helen Wurlitzer Foundation, where I'm as a composer in residence, and I've been working on works, including finalizing this cantata for the past 3 months.
That's amazing. That sounds quite something, this residency.
It is. It
Yes.
gives so much solace and space, and really the space to ask, where am I now, like metaphorically.
So tell us where you're from and a little bit about your path.
I'm a composer. I'm from a very small village called Oldřichov, which is my favorite tongue twister for Anglophonic country. And then
what country?
After studying in Czech Republic.
Yeah.
Czech Republic, and after my studies of composition in Prague, I moved to San Francisco after doing a pretty thorough research of all kinds of institutions. San Francisco landed in my heart the most.
Great. And I was trying to remember, so we met in Paris when you were a student at the program I teach in there. Do you remember what year that was?
It was 2016.
2016.
That's how far we go back.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I've been telling the chorus, we've started working on your piece, that I saw a choral piece of yours at that time, and it made a very big impression. I think it was a Lorca setting that you wrote at that time, and I still remember it was really remarkable. So we are thrilled to have begun working on this piece. It's really quite distinctive voice that you have, I think, as a composer. And I think it's hard for people maybe to talk about what they do, but we're going to ask you to do it anyway. So why don't we start maybe with text? How did you come to this choice of text, this choice of subject? Tell us what the texts are and how you came to feel they go together and all that.
Oh, it's a rabbit hole, and I love this rabbit hole. It's tied to actually to our history together from 2016. When you asked me to work on some work, we went through, as you mentioned at the very beginning, through like all kinds of differences in the thought process and in the topics that I think both sides saw differently, and I think that really informed. It was a really formative, essentially, experience where since that point, it's really influenced how I think of my creation and what I try to deliver, what I try to communicate. It helps me to gain more perspective. So I think to really summarize where I'm directed towards, or like what I do, is it's not even necessarily tied to just composition. I am trying to think of things creatively with enough perspective that essentially create this realm of different creative activities, whether it's as a composer or a concert organizer or a performer or conductor, and that's been gradually evolving into this tendency of focusing on empathy and how we can creatively approach this at times buzzword, but often underexplored and understood. That's probably not a word, but nevertheless. So yeah, this cantata, I think, is a specific testament to this obsession of looking into things that hopefully could resonate.
Can you say more?
Timelessly and with enough perspective.
And are you thinking of this cantata in the framework of empathy that you mentioned?
It is in that world, yes. Because I don't know if you want to get into the topic of the cantata, because
yes, I
think definitely.
So. Yeah, I think so. For listeners coming to know what to expect, I can tell you that working on it, it feels like it's in a very specific and unusual psychic place.
It is very true.
Yeah, can you speak to that? Say, if you think that's right, tell it. Can you articulate at all what that is?
I found myself while writing this to be paradoxically, unusually in such a calm mindset. And the reason why I say paradoxically is because the topic is not at all light.
What is the topic?
It is it deals, well, I think of it as sort of simple concept within a very complex realm. And the simple concept is also a very universal, and I believe that needs to be uncovered and discussed and experienced. And it is about the power of love and the transformative power of love that can guide us through, that is timeless, that can guide us through many challenging situations.
And just for
it's not a,
might not have heard, you said love, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Transformative power of love. Yes.
As the title reveals. But it does not follow a traditional linear story, which might also kind of talk into the form of the piece eventually. And at some point, we through the selection of poetry, we follow sort of an arc, and that it dissolves, and then it actually becomes more abstract and more about, I believe, the listener's experience. That the story actually that starts slightly concretely, even though it still can be understood more abstractly, it still can create this invitative space, which is the ultimate goal that I wanted to achieve. Is when dealing with these concepts, it's so important for me, at least, to create an invitative space rather than having everything in such a face value and very intense, because it can create a claustrophobic feeling. So as the story dissolves, I'm really interested in personal explanations and personal experiences of the concert goers. What would they take away from it? Which also puts me in a interesting state of talking about the work, but also not revealing too much. I think I can talk about it to a certain extent. Also, I need to make sure that it's not a didactic. I want to. I really wish for the people to have their own grasp on how to listen to the piece. I also think that it is necessarily best experience to experience it live.
For sure. Yes.
That's the power of transformation too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think as we've worked on it, and we're just beginning to work on it, and we don't have the instruments for quite a while yet, but you can feel the energies of the live performance will be fierce. I think that the music has so much technique, I think, on the part of you as a composer. about how to, even though the piece is not narrative, there is a lot of musical momentum. And that's an interesting thing to experience. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm so glad that you mentioned this, because that means that partially the communication is already in the right place. You know, when dealing with complexity, there has to be sort of a balance of some simplicity. So if I delve into abstractness and the world of possible different explanations and even raising questions, for me, it's also important to guide through and find a common ground, which might be in the way how I use the material. I'm a big supporter, and it probably stems from my upbringing, musical upbringing. Is a great supporter of economy of means when it comes to musical expression, and especially if it comes to how many minutes work. It's careful planning and looking into how to deliver these intricate ideas is a challenge, and I'm very happy that perhaps the performers and you see it right away, and it makes me glad that it comes through.
Yeah, it absolutely does, and I think one of the things that I would want listeners to be happily looking forward to, confidently looking forward to, is that although some of the ideas are quite abstract, and there are moments of complexity in the music, more than moments, there is a lucidity to what is going on musically, and there are moments of many extended passages that are very transparent. And you know, the language can get away from us. Simple to listen to, direct in their expression. So as a listener, you would never feel, I think, lost as you're following the narrative of the music. Something I feel that as a composer you did very carefully is you thought about the listener's experience. I think you just said that, and that the piece is really calibrated so the listener doesn't get lost in the music, even though there's a kind of abstraction to the story, to the mood. I was thinking, as I've worked on the piece, it feels very dreamlike. And I think in the same kind of storytelling we have in dreams. So that the dreams, you know, we come away with kind of the plot of the dream, but we also know that there was more to the dream than that. There's an interpretation to the dream. And I wondered if the idea of dream resonates with what you were doing.
It's a perfect allusion, so, because it literally starts with a dream, but that was not at all a dream.
Yeah.
As Lord Byron would say, and that's also the first poem. Maybe it's a good time also to introduce the sort of selection of the libretto of the poetry. It is a compilation of very different approaches to writing poetry, but I really love it. It was also a great challenge to find a way how to compile it. And it starts with this dream, which it's a question: is it a dream? Is it not a dream? A narrator from Lord Byron's Darkness, which reflects the eruption of Mount Tambora in 1815, starts, but it's immediately interjected with Emily Bronte's The Two Children, which gives sort of some possible connection to a specific character, perhaps two, I don't know, people have to listen. And then it somehow dissolves, and that's when it comes to the form of the piece. Also, it's written in 5 sections, but it also could be understood almost as if like a larger 2-part arc, because the first 2 poems, which is the Lord Byron's Darkness and Emily Bronte's two children, dissolve, and then they go introspectively into Christina Rossetti's De Profundis, state of lamentation, essentially, and then symbolically also the transformation begins, and symbolically also because I chose E. Cummings, and there are so many reasons why I chose E. Cummings, but the symbolism is also wonderful because all these poems were written relatively in a similar period in the former, and then the E. Cummings comes much later, which also sort of gives the perspective of resolution and battling with hope, but also through this wonderful introspective reveal of love, and love can have many explanations in my work, in specifically how I decided to set it, because it can mean a motherly love, it can be spiritual love, it can be falling in love for the first time. There are so many ways how we can look at love, and I hope the listeners will pay close attention to it and will have their own agendas in listening.
Yeah, I think for sure. I mean, I'm a little torn as to whether to say this out loud, but my experience of the piece so far is there's almost a sort of anthem for love at the end. That is really overwhelming. I think it's a very strong statement. And especially there's a turn in the music where it's repeated, and there's a kind of elision to say it again, and that's a very powerful moment, where we say it again, and it's so I mentioned briefly, then I had two more questions, and I think we're good to go, but there is a feeling of technical, you got to find the right word, sophistication, control, ideas. You're thinking so much about harmony, about counterpoint. Everybody thinks about those things, or they don't, but you're really using the tools of the tradition. And I wonder if you could speak maybe to both aspects, that the tools as you understand them, and then if there are composers you think are particularly influences on your own music. Yeah.
That's interesting, because this question, or respectively the answer, will keep the same, I think, bone structure, but it will always evolve in different ways, particularly in influences. I grew up in a traditional environment, being educated as a composer at the Prague Conservatory, which focused really on the craft of counterpoint, harmony, and this sort of classical romantical, and with some points of Renaissance practices, and then I moved to the United States, which I was faced with completely different approaches, and very different from European modernism or postmodernism. There, the postmodernism and different ways, not just in terms of aesthetics, but really the way of thinking of a creative process. That's something that I learned to, and what I think longed to learn, because at some point I felt back home that it gave me so much, which I'm really grateful for. But I also lacked certain freedom of thought, but also paying attention to the creative process, to the thought process itself, rather than the result. And I think I found it in particular in San Francisco, where I continued my traditional education, which also gave me a lot with my mentor and friend David Conti, that is also yours or your friend,
colleague.
A colleague, yeah. but also I was able to navigate things on my own and to be experiencing sort of this artistic growth in a very different environment. So I do view craft as a very helpful tool, especially when it comes to narrating, or when it comes to really, whether it's storytelling or painting or delivering some idea, some thought. That's when also my other mentor, John Corleano, was very influential to me to think of structure as a sort of a paramount means, because then in my own teaching, I saw how it really transcends any aesthetic choice when the structure is solid, and when there's when you're dealing with larger forces or larger arcs, it is so beneficial to have these tools at hand. Then there's a completely different realm of music, which is improvisatory music and chant music, which is equally exciting, but it's a very different way of expressing or storytelling.
Yeah.
And so I view this tradition as for me an important tool in when I express things and when I try to deliver I would say complex but also simple ideas. I think, sorry, it gets long-winded, but it's a constant thought process, and partly also what this solace at the residency offered me, because I think if you asked me 3 months ago, it would be probably like a different answer. But what is particularly exciting for me is dealing with art in this dichotomic concept of and I like this quote by Cesar Cruz, who says art should comfort the disturbed and also disturb the comfortable or comforted. So this dichotomy of dealing with something. Sorry, let me rewind. I think just to put it simply, which I don't think there's a simple answer. I think the tradition and the toolset that I have and that I constantly expand allow me to create sort of, or think about it with perspective, how to create a common ground that a listener can get into, but also allows me to think of it in layers in which I can add on to the complexity, and with the economy of means and hopefully some solid structure, which is not always happening, but that's what I strive for, and I think many composers try. It creates this moment of, when you look at the music, you constantly can change the perspective, and whether you're a performer, whether you're a listener, even as a composer, I'm sure that after the premiere, I will hear it completely differently, and we'll see different details. So I think this sense of tradition, sense of also openness to exploration and experimentation is an important tool set that I've developed by both having the traditional background and also getting into something that is more open-ended.
That sounds congruent with the music that we feel like we're working on, and I think it is. I wouldn't sell yourself at all short. I don't know that all composers by any means now are thinking this way, and I think something that is very striking is that in everything you've said, there's no wish to kind of smash the tradition or break with it.
No.
You really, I think, live in it. You want to, and you're as you said, taking these tools, expanding with them, but seeing their value and using them in a very artful, knowledgeable, and personal way, which is what tools are for. So
I sense I think a good overarching word could be clarity, and clarity I think comes, and especially in the modern world and the modern age and modern person, or oh, it's even a modern, postmodern, meta-modern person, where really meta is about the synthesis. I think this is a unique age that we can really synthesize of so many ways of innovating, but with so much respect and so much respect and negotiation of the tradition, but using it unabashedly as part of the toolset. I think that's beautiful.
Yes, I think you do it beautifully, and I think we've probably talked enough. But I would just say I think I often think about it in conducting, and I think that clarity is also a question of what you leave out and what you consider, and then you say that's clutter. And I think something that's very striking about your piece is clarity in that way, that you feel that everything is really quite intentional. And I think that can be very hard won. So I respect that. I think we all do, and congratulate you on it. And I think we can wrap up and say we can't wait to have you in New York, and to work on the piece. I think it's really going to be quite something. And we're feeling the power of the music in a very deep way. So, and as you say, even though it goes to it touches on some dark themes, but it also has enormous redemption and resolution in it, and it's really beautiful. So, very excited. Look forward to meeting you. I'll stop the recording and we'll say goodbye.
Okay, thank you.